So I would like to start on the theme today, and based on your long experience of internationalization, we have two issues or two questions that we will talk about, or you will talk about. First of all, I'd like to turn to you and open up with, there's a vested interest, there's a substantial increase in the interest in collaboration with Africa, not only research-wise, but also here at KTH, management-wise, in Sweden, in Europe. If you look at EU funding, for example, there's a lot pointing in the direction of Africa, not least in the sub-Saharan countries. So how can we take advantage of this opportunity? I leave it up to you.
Well, why should we? Well,
once more.
yeah. So I would like to.
Oops. Yeah.
Okay, it's quite okay now. Yes. So I think it's quite interesting. I mean, if we look at demography, we can see that in 2050, 40% of the young people in the world, those under 18 years of age, will be in Africa. Just imagine what that means when it comes to technology development and culture. And also we see all these aspects of leapfrogging going on in Africa. So I think it's very interesting dynamic, both obviously regarding demography, so in a way the future is in Africa, and also with leapfrogging that several technology steps are skipped in Africa. And we can see, for instance, I mean, here we use Swish for mobile payments, but long before that we had M-Pesa in Africa. And I think if we would just go back, let's say 20 years ago, when someone would say that we would have, payment systems based on African payment systems in Sweden, no one would really have believed us. But that's the situation now. So it's very important to be part of this development and find ways for us to upgrade our innovation system here.
Yeah, well, of course, being in Africa today seems to be very obvious, and it's very difficult to say no, we shouldn't, because there are so many benefits which Andreas is talking about. But so one question you can ask yourself is, of course, Sweden is a country with 10 million people. That's a small country. We have limited resources. Why should we do it in Africa and not elsewhere? Of course, we see the benefits, but I'm trying to get a chat now. That's why to question this a little bit, because it's obviously that, well, for me, of course, I like this engagement with Africa, absolutely, and I see all the benefits. But you can always ask yourself how and in what way, and I think that's a very important next step for us to discuss and to see, because right now, for me as a KTH professor or KTH vice president, the biggest thing is not that we should do it. It's very obvious. But the how is a little bit difficult sometimes to find, because I think we all talk about partnerships, we talk about mutual benefits, we talk about the joint efforts, and they really have to be joint. They really have to be partnerships, and perhaps with special regards, but still we have to go from the old way of working with the new way of working with more of a partnership. And still, we're competing with so many other countries. China is rushing around the world. Russia is somewhere. We have South Africa. We have everyone else that's moving around, and of course with the and US, Europe, with resources we cannot have, and so how can we use our capacity and our abilities in the most efficient way?
And I think that it's very important to have this kind of trend analysis and policy analysis, so that you can we can better understand what's going on, what kind of opportunities, what are the challenges, and so on. And with that said, I think it's very important to have this presence or a footprint on the African continent somehow. But on the other hand, Africa is huge.
Exactly. I was thinking about the word that you used, Stefan. You used the word capacity. We have, over a long period of time in the EU, there have been these capacity building projects. And we're moving away from that, I think, in the collaboration and the partnerships that we're establishing with our African partners. It's really collaboration. And I would like to stress that word collaboration. It's cooperation is usually from one to the other, not both ways. Collaboration is both ways. So if we play around with the word capacity, what would you say is modern capacity building?
Yes, that's a very good question. Well, capacity building historically has been to teach some other colleagues in the world how we do it. This is the way we have a PhD program. This is the way we do industrial relations. This is the impact, blah, blah. But today, capacity building is capacity for both partners.
Exactly.
That's a big difference. And for us, coming from our position in the previous way of working, it's very important that we also look at it as capacity building, our capacity. Because even if we try, we have to use more than the word of mouth, so to say. We have to be more precise. We have to be more engaged ourselves, but we also have to expect more from the other partner, and that's very, very important, I would say, because if even it will be very difficult in different parts of the world, parts of Africa perhaps, but we have to expect that. We have to build it such a way.
And I think with it's really balanced partnerships that you have, both sides have to give and take, and the collaboration should really be for this kind of mutual benefit. And at STINT, I mean, the programs that we have is for funding balanced collaborations for mutual benefits. And I think that's so important because, again, Sweden is a small country. Sweden contributes with less than 2% to the global knowledge production, and we need to collaborate with all those important environments where we see innovation and excellent research and other reasons for collaboration.
And I think when we do that, I think it's also important that we try to also find partnerships with people from outside of Sweden and Africa, because with like-minded people, so to say, so that we can build the values we have into the processes we are working with, into the partnerships, into the capacity building. Of course, we see a lot of European partners, and I would like to see more collaborations with the European partners and partners from different parts of the African continent.
And I think related to Tina's question, why should we take this opportunity? It's really, we are at the early stage, and sooner or later, universities everywhere will see the benefits and so on. And always, if you can be one of the earlier ones in the partnerships, I think that pays off in the long run. But again, it's also important to know why you want to engage in a specific partnership and also know who you are collaborating with.
Thank you for that. So what? This is sort of a tweak of my original question. Why is it an opportunity now? Why is there such an increased awareness now?
I think the opportunity right now is that I think we can see. I'm not an expert on the details, of course, and some people might question my claims, so to say, but I think that we see a change in Africa as well, and that change in Africa is changing the whole picture, and when that change comes, it's an opportunity to not go into everything, so to say, but to try to take advantage of the possibilities that might arise from this kind of change in these countries as well. This is still the same we discussed before. This partnerships. We are talking partnerships. We are not talking aid. We are talking how to build. We have at KTH projects which are. We are working with stakeholders in countries in Africa where we do not. It's actually people, industrial PhD students coming from public entities in those countries. It's not, and they're working with the digital solutions. So we have the knowledge generation, we have the research part of it, but we also have the same kind of relations we have had with European and Swedish partners, with the external stakeholders. And we are not working with a university that supports, well, we support a university in some kind of sandwich program. This is a different context, I would say.
And I think it's important also that the students of, in this case, KTH, can be part of this development and work with African students. And I've been to some innovation centers in a couple of African countries where you have African students together with foreign students working together on different innovation projects and so on. And it seems so much energy, and you have funders coming from across the world sponsoring these projects and so on. It's quite fascinating dynamic that I think it's important for students to have a chance to be involved in. And also from university perspective, how it can, mix education with research and innovation.
I think it's there's like you were saying, there's a drive for change in many of the African countries. Do you see any bumps in the road or something that you need to be aware of, that we should be aware of, and that our African partners should be aware of from your experience? Any hazards, so to say?
Probably so many. But I would say, I think you should try to build from the bottom up, gradually take it step by step. But don't expect everything to be perfect the first time you do the first step. We have to be more persistent, so to say, to be able to see the benefits coming, and building a partnership and building capacity is nothing you do in a year or two or three. It takes time. So we have to have a strategy. We have to be both partners. The African partner and the Swedish European partner they have to have the same kind of mindset, that it takes time, and we should, so to say, allow it to grow. KTH has a new strategy since a few years on Africa, and one of the ambitions with that one, from my position, is to really focus several activities in the same areas. Because we've had a lot of, one PhD student here and another one in East Africa, one in West Africa, one in the middle. Very nice things. But if you want to build something that can, so to say, grow and into a more consistent, I would say, or a long-term partnership, I think you have to do a little bit more of everything. Research work, education, partnerships, innovation. And that's what we do, for instance, in the Global Development Hub.
And it's important to have the engagement of everything from university leadership, researchers, students, lecturers, to be engaged in these activities so that you get as much understanding as possible, because then, of course, the threshold will be lowered as well. But then, of course, in the STINT, we've been working also together with KTH, Karolinska and Lund for several years on responsible internationalization. So it's also very important to, really know what you want to do and who is the partner and what you want to get out of this, and you know that it's carried out in a sound and good way, a responsible way.
Perhaps know your own partner is more important than ever.
And that's actually a perfect lead into the second part of our talk. But I would actually like to turn to the audience and say, are there any comments so far or any questions that you would put these two chatterers? Yes, please. Do we have a microphone? Just a second. Over here.
Hello. Thank you very much. My name is Kweku. I come from Ghana, an old KTH student. Now I'm an entrepreneur, so I just basically look for money. The question I want to ask is, with this collaboration, is it just on the university level, or there will be the need for private business individuals? The reason why I'm asking this is that I know there are some projects that they would like to do prototypes. And those prototypes, when they are left to the university level, it becomes a little bit difficult to implement. So is there a room for people who know how it works on the ground, let's say where the raw materials or whatever they need for that? Because where I sit, we also have, my government, for instance, has incentives where for such things, they give tax breaks. So if there is the need for, oh, this is a prototype, it's being tested, it's going to benefit both Africa and Europe, they have room for these things, knowing that it's a private company that is also helping to develop it. And then it becomes a win-win. So I just wanted to know how they are looking at it. Thank you.
Would you like to?
Well, as a university in Sweden, and a technical university as well, we are used to work with different stakeholders. And of course, most of, I would say, I cannot, it's a guesstimation. 75% of the research we do, or 60% of the research we do, is in collaboration with another outside stakeholder, and not necessarily a company. It can be also an agency or authority, or whatever. It can be a city or a municipality. So I would say it would be very different or difficult not to include this kind of activities or stakeholders also outside of Europe. It's more difficult. It's we don't know them as well as we know the Swedish or European counterparts. But for instance, we're working with the Global Development Hub. Innovation is necessary because innovation is where we can take ideas, solutions, whatever, small, big, advanced, more simple ones, into the next step. So without that part, it wouldn't be a complete engagement. So I would say yes to your question, but I wouldn't underestimate the difficulties, at least initially. As I said before, to my chatter friends here, we need to take time. We need to have a long-term perspective because a small solution initially can be a bigger one later on.
I can say also from STINT side, when we support international cooperations between Swedish university researchers or even we have programs for more on university level and so on, and with their international partners. Of course, we fund the Swedish university practically, but we encourage the university to involve private actors as well. So there's no hindrance for that at all.
Yes, I have an idea. Well, you're listening, but we are talking. Anyway, when it comes to projects we have at KTH, especially when we have the master thesis work, we do a lot of international master thesis work in different locations. It's very much scattered around the world, one or two, mostly with universities. I have an idea what that we are, when we are trying to set it up right now, that we should cluster master thesis into certain cities or areas, like we would have a Shanghai cluster of master thesis, not only with the university, but also with the companies in that area. And the same with Minneapolis, Minnesota, we're discussing that, and it can be with the west coast of US. Why should we be able to have such a setup also in some areas in Africa, where we can say this is the Kigali 5 master thesis program 2025, and you can go to companies, you can go to the universities, and do the thesis in collaboration with a partner in that country or in that city.
And I think for you in the...
And you can pay a little bit.
Exactly. I mean, we have the STINT strategic grants, which is for university leaders. So I could encourage you and university leaders at other Swedish universities to apply for those funds. And exactly like last year, also this year we have an additional 5 million Swedish crowns to apply for involving younger researchers. So that I think is a great opportunity, especially to get those younger researchers more mobile, which I think is very important now after COVID. So at STINT we're focusing very much on younger researchers now after COVID, because so many during their PhD has not had the opportunity to go to conferences and so on. So with that combination, strategic grants and additional funds for younger researchers.
But I think that, to repeat what I'm saying all the time, we start small, then we could have one location in Africa, but let's say if we have 2-3 African locations where we can offer a program with a limited or number of let's say thesis work, which is it's for us as well, because we need our student to have a master thesis, and we can have a stakeholder that will also make it simpler, because in many ways it will also be a branding of the whole collaboration, of the whole work we do, which I think is beneficial for all of us. Even if I don't like all this kind of branding, it's necessary sometimes.
I was 2 years ago visiting a British university who has a hub in an African city, and among the things that they're doing is again looking at science policy across the African continent, and they send that back to the vice chancellor of that university. I think it's quite an interesting initiative, and having this understanding of getting the necessary, if we say, information on trend development and science development. So again, I think it's very critical when the world is now becoming more diverse but also more fragmented, and so to increase the presence abroad to get a better understanding of the situation and be able to evaluate also different cities or countries or universities and compare them to each other, so that one can make a more informed decision about the partners and so on.
Fully agree.
Thank you. So I think we will move on. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for the question. You've mentioned collaboration a great deal, the importance of being abroad. You also mentioned some of the hazards. But if we look at the second part of this talk, as it's been announced, is that international academic collaborations do face several challenges today. We have the geopolitical issues, and we have many incidents, to put it mildly, many incidents in many different countries. So how do you see that Swedish universities should navigate in this situation, which is a situation that we have not really had before? Would you like to start?
I can start. I mean, first of all, I think of course, we had the pandemic where the interest for internationalization dropped, especially when couldn't have mobility and so on. But then I think after the pandemic, there is a combination of aspects that makes researchers maybe less interested in having international collaboration, at least initially after COVID, which I think is a combination of that the world is becoming more fragmented, geopolitical issues and so on, combined with climate crisis and also, related to CO2 from flights and so on. But also I think during COVID there was some kind of situation where researchers became more comfortable working from home, which is good in a sense, and we also many of us learned how to do much more international work through Teams and Zoom and so on, which is fantastic. But also there is this need for having, the experience of being abroad in another country. And this is a complicated gray zone, and it has to be carried out in a responsible way. Again, we've been working on that for a long time and promoting it. So it's a combination also of promoting internationalization to come back to levels where it was before, but still it has to be conducted in a responsible way in terms of both, if we say, aspects related to environment as well as ethics and human rights and so on also.
I think this is international collaboration or university collaboration. It's of course a challenge sometimes, but I think and this geopolitical development it has put a lot of focus on certain problems, and of course media really likes to point out that it's impossible to work with that part and those parts, those groups and those people and those countries. I think it's a little bit to make it too simple. What we have done when we've been working with the responsible internationalization is actually not to tell people exactly what to do, because that's impossible, because all countries are different. All countries have their own character, or they have their own habits, traditions, culture, they call it sometimes, and they vary. But when we work with other countries, we have to be able to reflect upon the whole situation. We have to be able to judge and for ourselves find out if this collaboration gives me more advantages than disadvantages. And if we can motivate after reflection that this is a collaboration that or a partnership that really pays off, then I think we have a strong case. So we have to be able to do this more. We have to develop or educate ourselves a little bit to be able to do that reflection. If we say that, well, I'm a researcher, I don't care about the politics, that's a bad attitude. That's a very bad attitude. You have to be aware of this. You have to be aware of the difficulties and of the importance. But if you reflect correctly, you can also go on with your research on a little bit higher social level, so to say.
And if it's done in a responsible way, after all, it's so important that people meet across borders, sure, and to, get better understanding of Absolutely. How it is in different countries and places, and understand culture and so on. And science is great for that, but it's important to do it in a responsible way.
We have a very strange culture in Sweden sometimes. and people forget that sometimes as well.
I think that's really interesting, and I know that both of you have been working with several texts regarding the what we call responsible internationalization. The term is sort of a translation from the Swedish, but it's spreads more and more all over the world, the idea of working responsibly. Tell me a bit about the background. How did you come to start with, why did you start creating a text, a document regarding this? What was the background? How did the discussions go? What happened behind the scenes?
I can tell you, well, my picture of it. Well, before I was vice president, I was head of the School of Electronics for many years, and I have a little bit of a, if you can brag a little bit, you have your own strategy of working, and to make a change, you have to change the people. It's building a culture is so important. You cannot tell people, now you think like that, or you should do like that. It's a very slow process. So the only way to change and to build this capacity is to change the people that are on the university. And you have to do that in some way, educate them, teach them, but it has to be a short document. It cannot be a long, tedious book or hundreds of pages. We had this kind of the guidelines for reflection on international collaboration that we wrote. I think it's 6 or 7 pages. So anyone can read it, also a professor. And that is so important. So that was my idea, was that we have to build a culture, we have to do something that is simple enough to start building it. And then we have to talk with people, teach people, or meet people and discuss this. And this was difficult during the pandemic because this is very, very difficult to do online, I would say.
And in our case at STINT, one of the main reasons for it was that we noticed in applications that we received that sometimes researchers only think about scientific topic, and they do not they didn't really pay any attention to the impact that it could have on human rights or other aspects. And that's why we started to work on this together with KTH, Karolinska and Lund. And then we got a lot of interest from abroad as well. So currently we work with National Science Foundation in the US, Japan Science and Technology Agency, as well as a Canadian funding agency as well on developing responsible internationalization. But it comes a little bit in different forms in different countries, but we are really interested in finding some kind of global code of conduct for international research cooperation.
But I have an ambition at KTH, which I hope we will be able to implement it fully in a few weeks. But that is, we have advisory groups where you could put questions and then give you advice when it comes to international collaboration if you have doubts about the responsibility. But the decision has to be taken by the faculty themselves. So even if you get a suggestion, you can still, as a faculty, decide if I would like to go on with it, or if I listen to the advice and stop my collaboration or stop my proposal. I think it's so important that people take the responsibility themselves to take the decision, even if they get. Of course, there is a limit. If you break the law, then you break the law. But when it comes to all these kind of gray areas, it's not right, it's not wrong. It's in between. Then you have to take the decision as a faculty, as a teacher.
So you're actually helping people to weigh pros and cons in a collaboration.
Which is the only way they learn.
Yeah. And you've also been working internally at KTH a great deal with explaining what this is all about. I mean, you've been to the different schools and to the both management level and further down in the organization.
And it's the same as I said before. It's a long-term perspective.
Yeah.
I think the first, I don't think it's a drawback. It's a positive outcome. But the first thing that happened when you started to talk to people is that you get a lot of questions that you have to answer. But that's positive. So gradually, I see that people are much more aware of the overall picture. It would be too positive to say the whole KTH understands it, but it's more and more accepted that we have to act in a certain way. And it's not really right, yes or no, it's more like, think about it, find a solution, and go on if you would like to do it.
And I think it's, again, very important what you're saying with building a culture.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes in the universities, it's difficult to do that. Companies are, in general, better building this corporate culture than what universities
It's absolutely so. And of course, it depends on the fact that most of the professors consider themselves to be their own bosses, more or less. But in that way, you have to find simple ways and work differently to do this implementation. It's possible to do, but it takes time.
Thank you. Do we have, first of all, do we have any online questions in the chat? Do we?
No.
Okay, no. Are there any questions or comments from the audience here? Several. Excellent. So the gentleman in grey first, and then Mrs. Ambassador.
Thank you. I'm Cyril Arthur from KTH. You mentioned the need to focus collaborations. Do you think that focus should come top-down, say from some committee, or bottom-up from the researchers?
It's always coming bottom-up, so to say, from the researchers. But with having it in the strategy, it's a little bit of pointing to people that we should consider to sort of say, not merge, but to try to find complementary activities in a certain region or at a certain university or at a certain stakeholder, because that builds a long-term perspective better than single activity. So it's more like it's always coming from bottom up, but we might have to push it a little bit into certain directions.
Thank you. And we have the pleasure of having Her Excellency Diane Gashumba, the ambassador to Sweden and the Nordic countries, but Sweden, from Rwanda here.
Thank you very much for having us. My question is about this. It's a very nice slogan, KTH in Africa. And I want to commend the small presence KTH has in Africa, but very important and benefiting both sides, I believe. And my question will relate to some huge presence of institutions in Africa. I'll give an example. For example, we have Norwegian in Rwanda, but for Africa. That's a presence, that's a reality. And I believe that the owner or the founder of Norwegian, the fact that he made a decision to establish in Rwanda, but to cover East Africa, is because he saw some benefit. He wanted to do something big, but he believed that having a physical presence would add on what he was doing with Africa before. So my question is, do we really believe KTH should be in Africa? Should we have KTH in Africa more than what we have now? Because I've seen many Africans here with a beautiful project, and I'm very happy. I was very happy to go around and mingle with them and read about the fantastic project they do. And I believe those projects are win-win projects because from both sides, I think people benefit. But my question is, you from the KTH side, do you believe KTH should be in Africa more than it is today? And what benefit do you see in this? Stefan said something when he started his comment or his talk. He said, Sweden has limited resources. I don't agree with you. It's subjective, relative, and you said, why should we do this in Africa? So my question to you is, do you believe KTH should be in Africa? And then you said something, you said you see some change Africa is changing. I would like to hear more about this. And then you said Sweden has a strange culture. I would like, as an ambassador, to hear more about this strange culture, because I like the Swedish culture, so I want to hear more about this. And you, Andreas, you said something that is true, and I believe it's a huge benefit we have in Africa, human capital and the young people in Africa. So young people, it's a workforce that we rely on, and that can benefit from the high tech you have at KTH. But how do you think these young people, this workforce can benefit Sweden with the skills gap we have here in Sweden? How can we make this a reality? When we go out of this room, what do we take out of this nice gathering? Because I would be happy to see KTH in Africa, really. In Africa, huge presence. Thank you.
I think it's simpler for Norwegian to just decide that they go to Africa and invest, because they have it's a company with the resources they might have had. Of course, KTH is a state agency, which makes it difficult. We don't have that position that we can do this kind of investments directly, but we see all the opportunities. And I have been very clear about that with our people, especially in the offices where I work, that what we have to do right now is to find these partnerships where we see the commitment from our side, which has to be very clear, and the commitment from the other side that has to be clear in some ways that we can see, and that we call this a partnership, and that we can start developing common values and common development, so to say, and of course, so KTH in Africa will probably take time that we will establish. We haven't established something anywhere in the world, so we've had questions about China and so on, but we have never built something more like a campus or whatever it can be, but we have to find the other way of doing it, partnership, and that's. Still, we are a small country. We might have resources from an overall perspective, but to do this kind of investment, it's not a matter of money only. It's more a matter of building the trust and building from bottom up the different parts of a partnership that finally starts to pay off exponentially, so to say. And we have to be brave enough to admit that.
Yes, please do. Just a second.
That you want to see like a real partnership with like a joint commitment. I'm the ambassador of Rwanda. I already told Christina and the vice president that we want KTH in Africa. At least we want KTH in Rwanda. Yeah, and I have a good group of women ambassadors from Africa, Kenyan ambassador, South African, Botswana.
Yeah.
Tanzania, Zimbabwe, and I think that and Zambia. So I'm not talking on behalf of them, but my brothers here from Africa will agree with me. I think what we need to do is if KTH really want to be in Africa, we want KTH in Africa. That's a commitment I make here. And I've made since I've met Christina and the group and discussed good project. And we have resources. When it comes to good project, we have resources. And education is a high priority for Africa, especially for Rwanda. And the 20 years collaboration we've celebrated last year with Sweden through SIDA. I think the trust is there. We know each other. We've been working together for the past 20 years. So what is remaining, if the same wish is on your side, is to put on the table a proposal, and you tell us what you need from us to get KTH in Africa, in Rwanda. Tell us what you need. If it's resources, we find resources. And we've done this with some universities. Andreas, you visited Carnegie Mellon University. Yep. This is a beautiful project. Carnegie Mellon came from the US, established in Rwanda, and brought Africans to come and benefit from the US knowledge and Rwandan ground. And the government of Rwanda has put financial resources, but also these Africans who come to benefit from, they don't come empty-handed. They come with money, tuition fees. So it's just to assess the feasibility of the project, but where there is a will, I think everything is possible. So let's think about it. Let's make this a reality. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I can fill in there a little bit because of your question to me also, that I think what's very important, again, this young population in Africa, so many bright minds that I think we need to work with together in partnership so that we can together find new ideas and solve the problems, and so that we have global challenges and so on. And you mentioned Carnegie Mellon University, and I was about to mention that as well, because I think it's such an interesting example with CMU Africa, which is based in Rwanda. But they don't only have these 2 master programs, but I think it's very interesting the balanced way that they also have courses from Kigali to the MBA program in Pittsburgh about African business models. And I think that's really exciting how these students at the main campus in Pittsburgh can see these business models in terms of microfinancing, cloud computing, and so on. So I think that's a very interesting model and concept.
Thank you. Ramon, you had a question. And did that mean 5 minutes? Yeah,
Sure.
5 minutes. Okay.
I have one question actually.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I was actually looking at the squares behind you.
Yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned why should we go in Africa? And there has been COP28 now in Africa. And I mean, Sweden wants to electrify, double production of electricity. And of course, that's a huge challenge for Africa. Isn't this really one of the greatest opportunities to work on this sustainable development goals? Or one, I mean, at least electrification and energy production, as also you feel, Stefan. Comment on that. What can we learn from them, and what can we get benefit?
Yeah,
Thank
but
you.
that's of course all the opportunities we have. We see all the opportunities, and I fully agree with Ms. Ambassador that we can do that. And I actually, when we started to discuss this some time ago, is last year, we said, well, let's start a bachelor program or a master program together with Chalmers, for instance. Because I think it's a very nice way of spreading resources, because a full program might be difficult for a university initially to build, and let's start a program together with another partner like Chalmers, where we know them very, very well, of course, and we can take the next step. So we have to find the starting point. Now we have a legislation in Sweden which is really, really not working that well. It's not the American one. And we have to find the way to start educating people in that way. But I think it's also important, if we do that, it has to be reciprocal.
Thank you very much. Did you want to add something?
I just wanted to mention briefly also, I agree that maybe Swedish university should work more together internationally. And I think with STINT's strategic grants, we have enabled Swedish universities to work more together internationally in a strategic way. And I think my experience of having worked in China for 2 years for KTH, the experience was also when we started to work together with Chalmers and Karolinska, it got more sustainable in a way. But of course there are many different challenges. But if there is a collaboration on the Swedish side, I think that is really good for making the initiative more sustainable over time.
Thank you very much. And I think on that note, it's a perfect note to end this chat. And Madam Ambassador and everyone here in the audience and online, thank you for participating. We're taking small steps. I think this is a start. We have the African strategy here at KTH. We have our hopefully now growing community, African community here at KTH, and these African days, which is a start. And we have many collaborations within Global Development Hub, for example. I see Anders over there, yeah, within Global Development Hub, but also with other ventures that we have focusing on mainly eastern and southern parts of Africa, but also some other areas. And so I think the future is bright. And on that note, thank you very much for, and I'm going to try to not be too clumsy. Thank you very much for your participation. Please stay and mingle for a while, right? It's still open, about 30 minutes. And please access the website and see if you want to participate in any of the other seminars that are open during the week. And with that, a warm applause to our two chatterers. Thank you so much for, I have some bags here. Thank you so much for sharing and making us part of your vision and ideas. Thank you, Andreas.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. And that's it.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.